Now, 95.9 FM WATD presents Friends with Benefits, exploring relationships, social issues, and life stories. Be a part of the show at 781-837-4900. Friends with Benefits with your host, Brian Stratton.
95.9 WATD, Friends with Benefits here on a Thursday night, July 2nd. It's a beautiful evening, and we're rapidly getting the roundtable in order. Gabe's on his way, but we got Josh Stratton here. How you doing, Josh?
Doing excellent as always.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming by. I'm going to turn this thing down, get the monitor down. Special guest Bob Ryan from the Boston Globe and ESPN. How are you, Bob?
Very well, thanks, Brian.
Good to see you. And I was fortunate enough to see you last week at the Duxbury Library doing your symposium on your new book, My Life in Sports, Scribe.
Yes.
Which I started reading, and then my buddy Lenny has my book, so that's gone with the wind. But I did get the audio track, which, by the way, if you don't have the time to read, go online and find this audio track, because that's, to me, I'd never gotten an audio book before. And it's as simple as you're driving down the street, you're taking a 2-hour trip, and you're getting reading done while you're driving.
Right.
There's nothing like it. Nothing like it at all. But so, Bob, let's talk about My Life in Sports, because I want to get right to it. What gave you the impetus, with the incentive to get this book done? Because I know you've done several before, and really, what was the driving force?
It was an agent named Andrew Blauner who had approached me. I had talked myself out of writing a book. I gave thought to it. It would be ridiculous to suggest I never thought about writing a book, and I did. But I really got a little bit discouraged because other people who I admire had written books that I didn't think got the attention they deserved. And I said, well, you're just flattering yourself. And I just put it aside in my head. Then about 4 years ago, I was approached by Andrew Blauner, who happens to be an agent, not just a sports agent, a general agent who has an affinity for sports, a personal love of sport, but he's an all-around sports agent. And turns out that Andrew had been a student at Brown in Providence during the Bird era, and as such became a reader of the Globe and of mine, and was a fan, frankly, of mine. He came to me, and he really urged me to write the book. And I thought, well, if he's that serious, he thinks there's a chance, and he's got a sense of the market, and he's a professional. Okay, so I told him the only thing is I'm not going to commit to it until after I retire fully from, which will be from the Globe after the London Olympics, which I did. And after that happened, we talked a few times, and we got a proposal together. He shopped the book. The second good fortune was that the book was taken by George Gibson of Bloomsbury in New York City. George and I had worked on a book back in 1989, and I had not had any contact with him in the ensuing 24 years. But it turns out he was still maintained an interest in me and was a fan. He's a brilliant editor, and he's the big cheese there at this company. But he certainly is a studious fellow, but he's a big sports nut, particularly baseball, basketball. He told me that he won 2 fantasy leagues last year, so that's the kind of baseball guy he is. And he's a basketball guy with a particular interest in the Celtics, and even though he's from New York and lives in New York, so he likes me, and he liked me. Anyway, he put a personal backing on this book that most authors don't get. I don't care who you are, from in any way, and I did, and it's really made a big difference. It's the best publishing experience I've ever had.
Sure, and I love the way it's illustrated. It starts, actually, if you buy the book or you buy the audio, it starts with the Dave Cowens bit, which
yes.
I had to listen to 3 times. And Gabe, you remember Dave Cowens. Gabe Soroder has entered the building.
Hello, Dave.
Hey, Larry, Gabe's in here.
Larry, sorry I was late, guys.
It's all right. It's the only time you've ever been late.
I know.
In 2 years.
To be honest, I was stuck on 139 behind someone who was just slow and weaving, and clearly he started the weekend a little early.
July 4th kicking off.
And I was close, but not close enough to make it on time. So I'm sorry.
That's all right. We'll let go.
Yeah, Dave Cowens, great hustle, battling under the boards. I mean, taking care of business underneath.
Well, I always
basket.
knew if I were to write a book that I would start with that incident involving Cowens, because it's, and my opinion and guessing, unique to me. I don't know of another writer in the sports writing business who, a male, female, now past, present, who's ever had a circumstance such as this that I recount in the book.
Sure.
Where he basically retires in my hotel room.
That's amazing.
And with my help. So I figured that's a good way to get people's attention to start, and I did.
So did he literally ask you to go to Red?
No, he asked for my permission.
How did this go? How does this go down?
The door, there's a knock on it. It's 12 noon in Terre Haute, Indiana, October 1st, 1980. They've just had the morning shoot around. They're going to play the Bulls that night in Evansville, Indiana, which means they'll be getting on a bus about 4 p.m. in Terre Haute. And they had played Indianapolis, the Pacers, the night before, and then they were holed up in Terre Haute. So there he stands with a practice uniform on. He's holding his yellow legal pad papers. And I said, "Come on in." I was on the phone. I was actually on the phone talking to Paul Silas, his old running mate.
Oh, right.
Who would then
great player in his own right.
Of course, was then playing for Seattle.
Yeah.
So I said, "Do you want to talk to Silas?" So he talked to Silas, and then he hung up, and I said, "All right, what's up?" So he hands me these papers, and I'm reading them, and right away I noticed something is amiss. They were out of order, so now I got to reshuffle. I'm reading this. I said, "Oh my God, this is a retirement statement. He's retiring." Well, so I read it, and I said, "What do you want with me?" Said,
Exactly.
No, seriously.
It's the last guy in the world.
And he said, "Well, I want you to edit it. I want you to edit it. Tell me, fix it up if it needs any editing. And also, can we get it in the paper tomorrow?" I said, "Yes, I can do both of those things, and I'll need about, I'm looking at it, and I know and I knew he could write. He'd already written something for the Globe, and it was well written. It just needed a little tinkering here and there." And some transitions and punctuation, blah blah, usual.
Sure.
And I said, I'd take about an hour, maybe at the most. And I said, I'll get this done. And on the way out the door, he turns around and says, "Do you mind if I call Red first?"
So he's asking Red's permission.
He's asking me for permission to call Red on the phone. And
what kind of relationship did you have with this guy?
Well, at that point, it was
manager?
a 10-year relationship.
Sure.
And we always got along well. And when I say he was very comfortable with me. So here's the conversation. He picks up the phone. He calls the office. Red's secretary is named Mary Faraday. "Hello, Mary, it's Dave. May I speak to Red?" "Hey, Red, it's Dave. Remember the thing we talked about 2 days ago? Well, I'm doing it." "Okay, I'll see you when I get back."
So Red accepted this.
Yeah.
Red didn't argue with him.
No, didn't argue with him there.
Listen, if you guys don't know out there, listener land, Dave Cowens had to me, still had a couple of good years left. In the Milwaukee Bucks, a couple of years later.
Yeah, he came back, but not too well. But he didn't. He thought he was, and he was. As he explained in the retirement statement, his ankles were shot, and he didn't have the thrust, and couldn't compete at the level he wanted to compete.
Yeah,
right.
I get that too.
All right, so that's the general story. Now the story's not over. So now 4:00 in the afternoon, the bus is ready to go, and he gets on the bus to announce to the team that he's retiring. And I got several accounts, they all were the same, that he gives him this thing, and then ML Carr, who was the team's resident comedian, says, "Are you done?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Well, get the bleep off the bus then."
ML said that.
Jokingly.
Okay.
Of course. So now the bus pulls away. Dave and I are standing there. I said, "Well, now what?" He said, "Well, I'm going back." Remember, he's from Newport, Kentucky.
Oh, yeah.
And we were in Indiana, so we weren't all that far away.
Yep.
And he said, I'm going to go home a couple of days or whatever. I said, "Cool." The one little problem, he didn't have any transportation. Mm-hmm. He didn't have any money, because that was the way he was half the time. He wasn't a cash kind of guy. He didn't have any credit cards. He hadn't brought anything. He basically had nothing. And so I rented him a car and handed him the keys, and off he went. So that's the story. That's how the book opens. I maintain that is a circumstance unique to me in this business.
Well, Dave Cowens, too, to me, just as an observer, and I was a small guy, 6, 7, 8 years old. Even at that age, I could tell this guy was a quirky guy.
Yes.
This is a guy who quit 76, 77.
Right. He took a sabbatical, walked away from the team.
Walked away in the middle of the season.
Right.
And by the way, the team was bad already and just fell apart. And I love, and Bob will know because my dad was passionate about Celtics, Red Sox, whatever. So would listen over and over the Sidney Wicks, Curtis Rowe era, which in Boston lies in infamy.
Right, exactly.
It's like you hear those two names. Those two names are linked. You can't say Sidney Wicks.
Wicks and Rowe, right. It is. They go together.
It's like a law
together
office.
At UCLA.
The law office is a Wicks and Rowe.
Exactly. No, you're so right. They are linked together. And, Rowe was... He wasn't that hard on a personal basis, but Sidney was one of the worst characters. Just one of the most difficult characters that I've ever encountered in Boston.
Really?
He was tough.
And he had talent though as a ball player,
and
right?
drove Heinsohn crazy because he didn't want to do what Tommy wanted him to do, how Tommy wanted him to do it. Mm-hmm. And it is a documented fact. Go look it up. Just go look him up. Go basketballreference.com. Look him up. That he started off 24 points a game, co-rookie of the year or rookie of the year in Portland, and every year his scoring dropped for like 8 years in a row.
Really?
Yeah, every year. And by the time he came here, he had deteriorated. But Tommy wanted him to be a rebounder and defender, and Sidney didn't want to do that. And anyway, he was a difficult character, and he was not hustling, and people hated him. He's one of the most least liked players, really, one of the least liked players in Celtic history by the fans.
Understandably, though, because I guess he gave up on. He was like Antoine Walker, if you remember Antoine, maybe like that.
Well, Antoine, fans loved him, though. Antoine was
really
the younger fans loved him. He was a polarizing player.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm 23. I was a fan of Antoine Walker.
There's still people walking around here wearing number 8 jerseys. That Antoine is still finally remembered by a certain segment of the population. He wasn't hallowed the way Sidney was, which was universal, because Antoine did have his adherents.
How about Bad News Barnes? You didn't even mention him in the book,
Marvin,
did you?
First of all, let me correct something that is a popular misconception.
Providence College, right?
Hardly unique to you.
Yeah.
He is not Bad News Barnes. And,
Okay.
this really drove me crazy when he died, and even the New York Times obituary blew it, okay?
Okay.
The real Bad News Barnes was Jim Bad News Barnes, and we had him back in 1978 and 79. Jim Bad News Barnes from Texas Western, first-round pick of the Knicks in 1964. He was Bad News Barnes. Marvin inherited that nickname later on. He was not Bad News Barnes. And Jim Bad News Barnes was called Bad News Barnes not because of any personal behavior problems. It's because he was bad news for the opponent. That was the nickname given to him in college, and he brought it with him to the NBA. And Marvin, of course, is a much different character, self-destructive, squandered talent. Never hurt another person other than himself, except for the tire iron he brandished with Larry Ketvertis. That's another story. But that aside, once he got in the NBA, he wasn't about. He was about squandered opportunity and talent, and people, because his name was Barnes, people just kind of slid the nickname over, and that was wrong. He was not Bad News Barnes. I'm off my soapbox. I'm sorry.
No, but
let the record state that that was not his name.
It absolutely wasn't, and yet
it was needed to be
and yet
known.
It's now forever in the New York Times obit, which is totally wrong.
Oh, and that's sad. But listen, we're speaking to Bob Ryan of ESPN and the Boston Globe, and also the author of the book Scribe, My Life in Sports. We'll fast forward because we have chunks and segments all through this book that range all over the place between basketball, baseball, tennis, golf. You're even talking about Tiger Woods at the end of the book.
Oh, yeah. I covered a lot of Tiger Woods.
And, things that I had no idea and even the NHL, you had some Bobby Orr stories in there. And
sure.
Which, in your estimation, Bobby Orr is
the best player ever. And this thing with Gretzky, it's just so stupid. Ignorant people that are impressionable and don't know anything about the game think he's the best player ever. Well, he's the best scorer. He's the best point machine ever. There's a lot more to the game. The essence of hockey is hitting and being hit. And Gretzky indulged in neither.
No.
He never was hit, and he didn't hit anybody.
He had protectors around
him.
him.
He had protectors, and he didn't hit anybody.
Yeah, nobody.
Bobby Orr was the only person to equate to Bobby Orr is Gordie Howe, and he's the first. Bobby Orr will tell you he thinks he's the best player, and that's fine. He's just too modest. And maybe he was. I wouldn't even. If you want to say Gordie Howe, I'm not going to give you an argument because there's a lot to be said for Gordie Howe. But that's it. I don't want to hear about anybody else. I don't want to hear about some guy who scored 200 points that didn't hit anybody. And I'm not. That's what Gretzky is a master, a magician. But he wasn't Bobby Orr. Bobby Orr's problem was he got hurt. And today, you know what happened? Yeah. The first knee injury, he gets scoped. He's out 10 days. He's back. Never has any more problems. But this was 1970-ish, and the medical advances weren't there. And he was plagued with bad knees for his very brief career, which ended after 10 years in 1976.
Josh, do you have any comments as moving into like the Bird era and all that stuff?
Yeah, no, I mean the Bird era was an era that I missed just barely by about a decade or so. But
too bad.
That was the number one thing I was looking forward to asking you about when I came in here. Is what was it like being the beat writer for the Boston Celtics?
Well, it's the only time in the Celtics' history since 1946 that they were more popular than the Bruins. That they owned the town from the time Bird came, and that which drove Harry Sinden crazy because Bork and Bird were rookies the same year, 79. And Bork is arguably the second best Bruin of all time. Certainly the second best defenseman, and if it 1 and 1A almost but Larry had the magnetism, and Larry made the Celtics bigger, and that's that. And they were, they won the 3 championships and lost in the finals twice, and it was a magnificent era, and it was magnetic. And Larry had a connection with the fans that I had never seen another great Celtic player have. He played to them, he played for them, he wanted to put on a show for them, and they intuited this and appreciated him in a way. He connected with them more than any other great Celtic player, and I'm talking about Cousy and Russell and Havlicek and Pierce and McHale, any of them. Bird connected with the fans.
Yeah, he certainly had an omnipresence, even as he played his last game actually ever the day I was born, May 15th,
well, that's funny.
1992.
That's pretty good.
It wasn't the last game. Do you remember the last game in the Garden? Game 6.
Oh, is that what it was?
It was Game 6 against the
Young,
Cavaliers.
so I don't remember.
Yeah, and
I was
he
there
was
on the receiving end.
He took over the game. He had like 6-7 assists in the first period. He took over the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he was hurting.
7,
the back was bad. He had missed a lot of games that year. There was actually some people that thought they were better off if he came off the bench, but they had done fairly well when he didn't play. But he put on a show that night, and
Well, he could still get it done offensively in '92. I thought defensively is where his disconnect was. I mean, he just couldn't cover.
Well, his back anymore. His back was
no lateral movement.
And of course, the whole time he spent with the Olympic team, it was just about can he even get healthy enough to get out there? I mean, they had to fly him over to.
That's very interesting.
They had to fly him over to Spain, laying down laying down, and whenever he would come out of the game over there, he had to lay down. His back was gone. He was so proud and happy to be on that team, but it frustrated him not to be able to put on not to be able to demonstrate who he was for this international audience that really wanted to see him play.
Right.
Well, the funny thing is, and I don't know if you remember that dream team. I thought Bird was probably the worst player on the team at that point.
Well, he was the least capable physical being on the team. You can argue about Leitner's presence on the team and why, but there was a reason.
Oh, that's true.
There's a reason why he was
Leitner.
there. There's a reason why he was there, and it was a legitimate reason. And he was the guy to put on there. They're going to put one collegian with the 11 pros, and he was the most decorated collegian of his time. And not Shaq. It was him. It was Leitner. He deserved it. Okay, so there was going to be a spot, and he got that spot.
I thought Krzyzewski had something to do with it too, maybe, right?
No, was Mike Krzyzewski had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
It was the powers that be. Dave Gavitt was in charge of the whole thing, and it was the powers that be of USA basketball.
No, Bob, I completely agree. He was the best college basketball player at that time, in my estimation, for sure. Some would argue that Isaiah Thomas was an unfortunate oversight on that squad. What's your opinion on that?
Well, I think it's been fairly well documented that he was basically blackballed by Michael Jordan. And and that, I don't know if you got a chance, but I would recommend, if you are interested in the subject of the Dream Team, the definitive account of everything that went on in the Dream Team was written by my friend Jack McCallum 3 years ago, and it's called The Dream Team. It's out there. It's a great book. He interviewed all the principals, for the book, and it's a fascinating book, and it's pretty evident that Isaiah was vetoed by Michael.
Gotcha.
781-837-4900. That's 781-837-4900. We got Brandon on the line. Hi, Brandon. How are you?
How are you?
Oh, good. How you doing? We have a question for Bob Ryan.
Yep.
Let's hear it.
Hi there, Brandon.
Hey, were you more popular now or back in the 1980s?
Me?
No, Bob Ryan.
Well known, he means.
Well, more well known now because television's cumulative toll of when I last covered the Celtics full time, 87, 88, I had yet to appear on Sports Reporters, which I've now been on 26 years. My full ESPN career had not begun, and now that is what people anywhere outside of Boston know me for, not for writing. And
so you have national knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
Before maybe in the 80s.
I mean, people, you'd be known to a degree, but not to the extent TV changed my life.
Right.
It changed all our lives. All of us have been involved with it, and totally changed our lives and expanded, your profile. So it's not even a close now. You know, I mean, it's much more now than it was then.
Right. What out of all the shows you've done, what do you think is the one that you're most proud of, or the one is your favorite? Sports Reporters?
Well, the favorite show is PTI.
PTI, right.
The fill-in on PTI is the best. I say continually is the most fun you can have on television. First of all, it's just simple math. On Sports Reporters, there are 4 of you. On Around the Horn, there are 5 of you,
right.
And on PTI, there are 2 of you. So the ham factor kicks in.
Right.
It's more performance art even than the other 2. The one on Sunday morning is really not much performance art. It's really more serious and sober. We get a little heated now and then, but it's not. You got to put a filter on it. It's Sunday morning,
right.
In America. Around the Horn, you got to act. You got to perform.
Sure. Now, for Around the Horn, I mean, there are set subjects that the questions are going to be.
Oh yeah,
based.
we know what they are. We have. Here's the form. Here's the way it works. At 10:30 Eastern on each morning, there's a conference call involving as many of the participants who can participate. Usually it's all 4, and sometimes it's 3, depending on what. Okay, and the producer, Aaron Solomon, he and his staff have been working since 7:30 in the morning to formulate a program. And he says, "Well, here's what we got for the A section. Here's what we're looking at, and we kick it around." He said, "And it goes through. Every person gets to weigh in, and they get an idea to gauge about how much dissent there is, or what aspects of it are good to talk about, and whether it's a viable topic. And we really could veto it if we really feel uncomfortable or think it's not worthy. But as instincts of the producer are usually tremendously good. That's why they're in charge of the show. So that's how, and then that takes place. That takes about 45 minutes to 50 minutes, and then you got a little time to do a little research. Then they provide an information packet. They provide a notes packet. And by the time I get to the studio, which is in Newton for me, West Newton, it's called Video Link. The packet's ready, and you have that as a backup for you. And then we sit down about 1:30. You hopefully, believe me. And sometimes there are delays, and we sit down about 1:30 and we do the show and tape it, and that's it. That's the way that works.
Cool. It makes for great television too. I love the the competitive aspect of a sports talk radio show. You got the point scoring and stuff.
The show comes out of the mind of a producer named Eric Rydholm, and Eric, when I first started, and he's the one who concocted the whole thing for PTI. And when I first heard that Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser were going to do a show for a half hour, the 2 of them, we all said, what are they going to do? Sit there and talk for a half hour? Well, it turns out, obviously, they don't just sit there and talk for a half hour, although they do, but they do in a format that is
mild competition.
And it's entertaining.
Sure.
And it's a different ways of going about it. All comes out of the mind of Eric Rydholm. Well, as time went on, he became the executive producer of Around the Horn as well. And when the Dan Le Batard show came into being, those same people run the Dan Le Batard show from Washington, even though Dan Le Batard show's in Miami.
Sure.
But they can. He's basically running 3 shows in one day,
wow.
5 days a week. And he's a genius. He truly is a genius.
You know what? I have to say this is some of the best programming that I think I've seen in sports television. Consistently good, day after day after day.
Well, he gets a lion's share of the credit. Now, of course, the talent. We who constitute the talent, like we have something to do with it. But I'm telling you that the preparation and the direction. We're talking earlier, Brian, about producing, right?
Yes, it's
and
huge.
People who have no idea, average person, has no idea what a television, movie, record, or theater producer does.
Any level.
No idea. And producers, without them, forget it.
You're done. Because they basically
could bring it all together.
Hey, we got Daniel on the line. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Any questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Bob Ryan what he thought about Amir Johnson signing with the Celtics.
That it's on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being, getting LeBron, okay,
right,
and 9 being getting, or 8.5 getting Aldridge, all right, which this is about. 6.5.
No,
he's pretty good. He'll help them marginally. He's a long and lean, and he gives them another good athlete, and improves the athleticism level. He's under the radar because he's played in Detroit since they have not been good, and in Toronto where nobody knows who's on that team in America. Let's face it. Yeah. So it's not a big deal. In the biggest scheme of things, they're a little bit better team today than they were yesterday because of it. But it's not going to move the fan needle that people have. I do remember when he was young, and I knew nothing about him. Remember, he's one of those guys. He's the last guy. He's from the last class that could come out of high school. Okay.
Yes, he was. And like I said,
I did not know that.
Now,
I didn't know that either.
If the Celtics in 2008, Daniel, had gotten with Garnett and Pierce and Allen, I'd be very excited because it'd be a wonderful complementary piece. But he's not a game changer.
He's the last class to come out of high school. He's been in the league 10 years. He's 28. And I remember a game he played early on with Detroit when I didn't know a thing about him. And he got 20 points here. And I went, whoa, how'd this happen? Anyway, maybe maybe a 5. Somewhere between a 5 and a... No, all right, I'm thinking on the fly here. Somewhere between a 5 and a 6.
6 seemed a little high.
But he helps a little bit.
He does help. But do we want him to help? And that's the question.
Well, that's another philosophical question.
Yeah.
Are there any other players that they're possibly going to sign?
I was hoping that they might get a shot at Tobias Harris, but all I know is what I read, the last thing I read today. I don't know where he's heading, but it may not be here. And after that, I don't know who else they're going to get. Nobody else is out there that they are going to get that's going to get you very excited, I'll tell you right now. So it's not going to happen.
Do you see any players going, not specifically Boston, but are there any other moves that you see happening from one player going to another team?
Oh, sure. Well, Aldridge is going somewhere. He's not staying in Portland. And it appears to be, the betting is that it's either Houston or Dallas or San Antonio, a Texas team. The three Texas teams they're all involved. And we'll see if that's the supposition. Remember, nobody saw Greg Monroe going where he went, to Milwaukee. And no one saw that. So people that think they know everything don't always know
that's interesting. That team was the worst team in the league just a couple of years ago. And it can turn like that. It can really turn around quickly.
They were very interesting in the playoffs. I hadn't paid attention to them all year. I knew their record, but I didn't pay attention to them. And then I watched them in the playoffs, and they're pesky and they're very athletic, and they do cause turnovers, and they got some exciting players. They got the Greek Freak, Antetokounmpo. He's going to be really good. That's his official nickname.
That's his official
name.
It's not a Bobism, all right?
He's the Greek Freak.
Bob, I
we don't need his agent calling here.
As the fans of the show know, I'm a New Yorker. And so I hope my Knicks have found the Lithuanian freak.
Yeah, no, I think that we don't know what.
But he's played in a league that what I've heard is sort of a step above the NCAA. Is that they're grown
the Spanish league is the second best league in the world.
Right. So that gives me hope for that team. Although I must tell you, it's very difficult to hope for the Knicks with number one, Jim Dolan at the helm.
Yep.
I'm a native New Yorker. Grew up $6 tickets to the blue seats in Madison Square Garden. I have my student ID.
I hear you.
And two, Isaiah Thomas still lurking around. I'm sorry. The guy's a great player, but he's managed to just demolish everything he's touched in the business world, and especially the CBA he killed.
Yes, he did.
He's going to come over and take over the Liberty now. I'm very nervous about the team. And Phil Jackson seems to be repelling people. At least Carmelo Anthony is. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that Phil ought to walk into Dolan's office and say, you know what, I can't take any more of your money. It's I'm being shameful here.
I second that.
I don't expect that to happen. But he's whiffing. He's whiffing here.
He's whiffing.
Why are they paying him $12 million if he can't? Yeah. To do what?
Right.
To do what?
Right.
Any of us, the four of us sitting here, could have done what he's done so far. Really? There's a lot of.
Aaron Aflalo was a nice player, but
we got to jump off the commercial break real quick. We're listening to 95.9 WATD Friends with Benefits with Bob Ryan. Calls after this 781-837-4900. 95.9 WATD here on a Thursday night, 95.9 with Bob Ryan, talking about his new book, Scribe, My Life in Sports. It's all over the map. Also, we got Gabe Sirota on the panel. And
great to be here as always, Brian.
Seeing Josh Stratton. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, it's a pleasure.
All right, man. So we left off where?
Can I just jump in and say thank you so much for coming down, Bob. It's really an honor to be sitting next to you. I really mean that. I feel very privileged, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, you guys are in proximity. You're a New York guy. He's a Jersey guy.
True.
I get.
There's a kindred nature to this whole thing.
Some sort of omission here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So going over the book, and I've spent the last couple of days I've actually gone through it twice now because it was so pleasurable for me. When's the last time you heard the name Steve Kuberski? You guys even know that name. He was a famous Pollock that was on the Celtics.
My favorite sign of all time was in Buffalo, which was a great rivalry for 4 or 5 years in the 70s. And
Ernie D was on that team. Yeah,
that's right. And they had a sign, and the mayor of Buffalo was Stanley Mikowski, by the way. Okay, this is a background. Okay, the sign was "Nobody's worse ski than Steve Kuberski."
Pretty good.
Well, Kuberski was like, to me, and like I said, it was the very beginning. I was like 6 years old, and I'm starting to follow this. It was kind of like the Bob Stanley of the Celtics. Like he just went out there and was kind of a, Well,
if you knew him, that's not a bad analogy in terms of the personality, because Bob Stanley is the ultimate. I mean, of all the athletes I have ever met.
Goofball, yeah?
No, not goofball. Of all the athletes I have ever met in a Boston uniform, okay, all 4 major sports, the most regularly normal. It was like your next door neighbor who happened to have a sinker. Seriously.
What?
The most normal, regular guy, everything about him was your next door neighbor. Kuberski was very, very down to earth in that regard as well.
Sure.
And of course, remember, when I started covering the team, and he was a rookie, and I was a rookie writer, at same age. Remember, I was the same age as the the youngest players.
Right.
And the dynamics of it totally different than when you're doing that. Totally
Well, you don't
different.
have seniority over them.
I mean, I was Kuberski, JoJo, and Cheney and myself are all within like a year and a half, and Cowens is 2 years younger.
Okay.
So that's the group, that's the core group that and even the older guys weren't that much older.
Right.
Havlicek was 29, I was 23, etc. Nelson the same age as Havlicek. Satch was there wasn't a huge gap. I mean, I fit in personally and socially in a way that a lot of as an older writer,
sure.
you can't and never will. It was just a very special freak circumstance for a writer. I had a very, very unusual apprenticeship in this business.
Right.
Well, I mean, it seems now Kuberski was on the '76 World Championship team.
He was. He was on both '74 and '76.
Okay,
yeah.
So I mean, that was.
He had come back to them. They let him go in expansion. He had come, but he bought to New Orleans. I'm giving you much more information than you want. And he came back to them. So yes, he was back by '76.
Well, it's funny. The '70s Celtics, which we're in, of course, Boston. Those 2 championship teams to me just seem like in forgotten land.
You're so right. They deserve to be remembered because there's a 4-year period. Well, first of all, their 4-year period starting in 72-73. 72-73, they win 68 games, and they don't win the championship because Havlicek gets hurt against the Knicks. They win the championship the next year. The next year, Cowens gets hurt, and he misses the first 17 games of the season, and they still win 60 games and get beat by the Bullets. We can talk, and a very painful loss that shouldn't have happened, but it did. And the Eastern Conference Finals. And the next year they win. And that's a 4-year period. Yeah, they were damn good.
So they were like close to a dynasty for a couple years.
Yeah, that's a distinct period in their history. You got the Russell era, you got what I call the Havlicek Cowens era, and you get the Bird, the big 3 of championship teams, and then of course the second big 3.
And sandwiched in between in '75 with my Warriors with Rick Barry, Jamal Wilkes, Cassie Russell. I mean, that's when I was in that area, and they took, to me, that was a great team.
And they were better the next year, and they were the best team in the league by far in '76 until they messed up the playoffs, the series against Phoenix, and Rick went into a snit. Rick Barry.
Well, he was a mental case.
He won a 1-game strike in Game 7.
He's strange.
I hate to tell you.
Strange guy.
They were the best team.
Yeah. We got Steve on the line. Steve, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. How you doing? You have a question for Bob?
Yeah.
What's going on?
You think Pierce and the Clippers could beat the Warriors this year?
No. He wouldn't have made the difference for them. They would have been better, certainly because he would have, they got nothing out of Spencer Hawes, and they could have used another body. But I don't. Now we can argue. I mean, you can make that argument, and I could see. But I personally don't think it would have been enough to get them past the Warriors.
Did you watch Pierce in the playoffs?
Yeah, I know he was terrific. But guess what? He would have been playing against the Warriors, and they would have defended him a little bit better. I mean, they were the best. Remember, their defensive metrics were 1-2 in the league all year. They could defend. So you can't assume he would have had the same level of success as he did in the playoffs in the East. I don't think he would have had the same level of success. But I'm glad that Doc has gotten him, and I think he's going to be an asset to them next year.
I think it's good for basketball. Thanks, Steve, for the call. I appreciate that. I think it's good for basketball to have Pierce back with Doc.
Sure.
I just think it's good. I mean,
absolutely.
It's just a feel-good story. He's kind of back with his old
Not
coach.
this is like, I'm happy for Paul. I think he's a good guy, good person, and he's gone home. He's literally home. I mean,
he's in LA.
he's
he
in LA.
is home.
Yeah.
In Inglewood,
good
so
thing.
good for him.
And that's special. That's special
it is
to a
nice.
player.
It's nice at this stage of his career. It's great.
Bob, I wanted to ask a question. Just covering the Celtics for such a long time, how would you characterize your relationship with Tommy Heinsohn?
It was up and down, and now it's been stable since 1978. It started out great, and he was great to me, and he was a mentor in terms of teaching me the NBA and the whys and wherefores. I knew basketball. I knew college basketball. I didn't know the whys and wherefores of the NBA, and he was willing to take the time, countless cups of coffee, God knows, and coffee shops and breakfasts and all that over those years. And then there was a point when we had a falling out based on the fact that I think he felt that he owned me, frankly, and that if I had an opinion that differed from his, it was disloyal. And I mean, that's my interpretation of it. We've never sat down and hashed it out specifically, but we had a falling out, and he wound up telling the team not to talk to me, and the team would then, so I'd get basically the reports of the minutes of the meeting like a half hour later, and they all knew it was nonsense, and it didn't end up very well in 1976, and it's one of the reasons I got off the beat at the time. I didn't want to face a whole year where we'd be at odds that nobody would benefit, least of all the readers, and I wasn't comfortable, and I was kind of washed out at that point. So, but that was a good. Well, a couple of years went by. We had no reason to have any much contact with each other. And then in 1978, 2 years later, there was a testimonial dinner for his old roommate, Jim Luskatoff. And I went to it, and he went to it, and I walked up to him at the bar, and I said, would it spoil your evening if I said hello? And he said, no, and went off. That was the end of it.
Right.
Never been. It's been
good
great.
move.
And I own.
Right.
If you go in my house, he's an artist and a tremendous artist.
I didn't know that.
Oh, he's a legitimate artist.
Like a painter?
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
he paints everything: portraits, landscapes.
Wow.
He's a tremendous painter, and he's a studied art. He knows art. He's an artist. And there's a Heinsohn painting in our living room, and Tommy, I consider a friend. But
That's great.
we did. But I'm glad. It was so stupid. On both our parts.
He could certainly rock a sport coat back in the day.
Yeah.
Bob, I wanted to ask you a question. Going back to the recent finals, you said Golden State, obviously this year, very great team. But what I wanted to ask you is, you covered the Celtics for so long, especially in the Larry Bird era specifically. You saw Bird play for so long, and all this talk today about LeBron James being, obviously one of the greatest of all time. He just dropped a 2-4 total for finals. So who do you put ahead, Larry?
Well, Larry lost a couple finals.
Larry lost a couple finals. He carried bad teams. He carried bad teams.
LeBron's done. Look, I'm not using that as the measuring stick. Number one, 07, just getting there was an incredible achievement. I would challenge, maybe you're the guy that can do this. I can't even do it, okay? If I were to give you a yellow legal pad right now and say you have a minute, name me as many guys on that 07 Cleveland Cavaliers team other than LeBron as you can. I want to know how many names you could get down.
There's only half a name.
Only two are jumping out at me. The Big Z,
Yeah.
So Jonas Ilgauskas and Boobie Gibson, who had that one great game in the playoffs, remember? He's out of the league. Right. Now, anyway, okay, and then this year, come on, they had no chance. Once Irving went down, they had no chance.
And Kevin Love didn't help either. But
but if you want to talk about the comparisons, look, can there be a bigger Bird fan than I? I don't think so. But I try to be realistic. I try to be realistic.
I mean, have you ever seen anyone do what LeBron does?
They're a little different. I mean, LeBron, first of all, two ways, there's no argument. LeBron's a better defender, individual defender, period. LeBron is a better athlete, period. Larry's a better shooter, period. Rebounding about equal. And I think Larry's a better passer, but that overall edge of LeBron, that he can still get some stuff done. Larry sometimes needed help to get a shot off.
Yeah, that's
Nobody has to
too.
help LeBron get a shot off.
Well, yeah, that's changed too. LeBron's becoming, an incredible passer in his own right.
He's the best forward passer since Larry, but he's not. Hold your ground. Don't let anybody tell you he's better than Larry as a passer, because he is not. But he's very good.
We're speaking of Bob Ryan, his new book. My Life in Sports, Scribe. You can get it on Amazon. It's all over the place.
It's in the, Barnes & Noble, the last great bookstore standing. If you have an independent bookstore, I hope you do. I would urge you to patronize that place first. Yes, it's on Amazon. It is. If you like audio, I certainly encourage you to get the audio. I did it myself, which is the first time I've ever been involved or asked to do one. It was an interesting experience. Brian will tell you. It's
a game changer for me, because I drive. I drive everywhere.
So, Bob, What was it
I
like?
urge you to do that if you like that. If that's the way you get books, it's out there on audio as well.
Can you share with us what that was like to actually read your own text?
Well, it was I didn't, it calls for some thespianism,
Right.
and I was happy to do it because I know where the inflection should be.
Right.
I know where the emphasis should be. That there's no way that an independent, neutral party would have the feel to. I mean, I'm saying everyone should read his own book.
Right.
And now we can't all sound like James Earl Jones. I agree, and I'm not exactly a Mr. Dixon.
Morgan Freeman.
Yeah,
But the story, there are too many aspects in the book that I needed to bring my emotion to it that I don't think anybody else could have done, and it seems to have been approved, met the approval of the professionals who approved it. You know what I mean? I'm not the judge. It was fun. It was a very interesting experience.
You did a great job narrating it. I mean, you seem very energetic. You seem to inflect, and there's a lot of dynamics involved when you're telling the story.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And
your heart and soul's out there. You talk about music. You talk about your family.
Right.
Talk about your upbringing. You talk about, listen, if you're a sports nut over the last 45, 50 years in this market, you basically covered almost every team. A little bit of Patriots. We went back to Fairbanks.
Right. I've been around the whole Belichick, Brady. I've been around since '64, since I came here, but I dabbled covering them. Cleve Rush, I sat down with Cleve Rush back in 1969. So I have my experience with the Patriots. I have my experience with the Bruins. Obviously, I'm much more known for basketball and for baseball and college. The Olympics are another thing that I'm very proprietary toward. I'm very fond of. Meant a lot to me in the career, and I wanted to share as much of that as I could.
Right.
So you did talk about the 76. I thought your analogy between us getting hosed by Oakland in 76 and then the football gods reversing the curse in 2001 with the tuck rule.
It's funny. The
biggest gift ever.
What a game.
The night of that game in 01, it was a Saturday night, and
I remember.
you have your early column. You have to write because you're for the Sunday edition.
Right.
So my early column was all about the 76 game and time to get. I forget exactly how. I got to go look it up, but I know I addressed the topic of, this great wrong took place 25 years ago. And I was there. I happened to be there. It's the only game I was at all year.
In Oakland?
Yes, I was there.
Oh my God!
I was at the game, and that's I can go chapter and verse on that day, and sure enough, we had this incredible occurrence where the justice was undone, and injustice was done to the Raiders.
Yes.
The tuck rule was ridiculous. It's a stupid rule. They finally got rid of it. If you know it was a fumble, I know it was a fumble. Dave knows a fumble. He knows. Everybody knows it was a fumble. But that rule was correctly called because the rules said it wasn't a fumble.
No question.
But the referee called the rule correctly, and the game's over. They're not going to win, and who knows what would have happened to them if they don't win that year?
Listen, Walt Coleman was probably the only ref in the universe that knew what that rule was.
None of us. I'm telling you right now, all the football geeks in the press box. I'm a basketball geek, but not a baseball, not a football one.
Okay.
Nobody knew about it. There was one person up there that went, "Oh yeah, the tuck rule, it's such and such." Everybody's going through the book. What the hell's the tuck rule?
Now, what we're referring to, I know you're a New York guy and you're young, and a lot of the listeners are young, but in 76, I was in the Bay Area at the time. One of the only games I ever wept openly after a loss. Wouldn't that have given you reason to?
I was so distraught. Look, I wasn't even, I sat in that, I was in town for the following reason. The baseball meetings had been in L.A.
Yes.
The Patriots, right before that, I was covering baseball.
Okay.
Patriots were up and playing that game. My boss said, go up there and help cover the game, do a sidebar in the game. So I went up to San Francisco, went up to Oakland, actually, the game. I'm sitting next to the great one and only Will McDonough, the guru of all time.
Love him.
And he's telling me they're the best team of football. Patriots are the best team of football. And they're up 21-10. And they're on their way. And then things happen. A brutal mugging of Russ Francis on a third down play by Phil Villapiano, not called. Sam Cunningham not putting his head down and getting an extra yard, running out of bounds, and then not getting a first down, that would have kept the drive going. And then, the roughing the passer, the infamous Sugar Ray Hamilton. Yep. Okay, and they lose the game. And I was going to go that night. You know what I was going to do that night? That night I was planning on going to the Cow Palace to see USF with Bill Cartwright playing the championship game of the Cable Car Classic. I had watched them play the night before. And I was going to. I said I can't do that. I just went out with the boys. We all went out drinking. I mean, nobody could deal with that.
Long story short is there was a roughing the passer call that made Oakland basically win the game. It took it from, it took out the snatch of victory from our hands.
But then Kenny Stabor did get him in the, he still had to get him in the end zone, which he did, But it was a brutal call.
Dave Casper was
so 25 years, we're all standing around here feeling sorry for ourselves on that one, And then finally the Tuck rule comes and undoes it, and now Oakland's going to spend the next, fill in the blank years feeling sorry for themselves.
We still have a pile of calls, but we only have about 5 minutes left, so we'll go to Rob real quick. Rob, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. You have a question for Bob?
Hey, you think John Farrell should keep his job?
I think John Farrell has got to prove that he deserves the job. This week made him look very bad. These two guys not knowing how many outs there are. You get the sense that there's no accountability on this team. He may be too professorial. He is and that's what he strikes you. He's a polysyllabic, cerebral guy that may lack the fire that is needed. Somebody's got to kick some butt in that team.
Ever since Miley,
he doesn't seem to have a butt kicking mechanism in him.
No, he doesn't. But you can't fire him because you can't send the message after he has his little song and dance with Wade Miley in the dugout. The players can get the manager
culpable
fired.
Is Ben. Ben's the one that brought all these people in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, and it is his fault. Any more questions, Rob? Hello.
Churchill.
Okay. Thanks for the call, my friend. So back to Farrell. I mean, I put a lot more blame on a player. I always think the manager, when they're losing like this, he gets too much blame, and when they're winning, he gets too much credit. I mean, the old adage.
He's always going to have a World Series on his resume.
He will,
but he's also going to have back-to-back last place, unless until further notice.
Which is almost more incredible.
And I can't imagine that there would be a giant rush to hire him, even though he's got a World Series on his resume.
There's no question.
It's going to be very interesting.
Well, he's a pitching coach,
and he's always going to be. He can do a lot of things. He'll always be employed in baseball. I mean, that's.
No, but I'm sorry, but why do you say that? If the guy took a team who was clearly the best team that year to the World Series, why wouldn't there be interest?
Because people are now downgrading it, and now it's chic to say it was a fluke. It's chic to say that.
Totally. And
that all those guys, those free agents, the 6 guys that had the career years, and and it was a fluke and all that, and Torrey Hunter overruns the ball, and Poppy gets the great home run, the big home run, and this is what they're saying.
No, I hear you.
I'm trying to answer the question.
Right.
It's not fair. Yeah. But this is what they're saying.
Right.
And that makes total sense. I mean, people do reiterate 2013 fluke. You can say that all you want. 2004 was a fluke in a way too. I mean, with the 3 games to 0. I mean, there's a lot of
it's crazy.
In every winning championship team, there's a point in those playoffs. Right. Their backs against the wall. They're going to lose and they're going to walk. So I mean, you could say a fluke to anything.
Sure. No. You're right. It's stupid talk.
It is stupid. It wasn't a fluke. There
can't be a fluke in several 7-game series. It's really hard to attribute a fluke to more than maybe one game's outcome.
But I do think it's a fair. But he needs to make an adjustment that he may not be capable of making now. That's the thing.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Last comments, guys. We're up against the clock.
So out of all the Boston sports moments you've experienced, what would you say is your top moment of all time?
I answer that question by saying I cannot pick one, but I do have one for each of the 4 sports.
So let's do that.
All right, the quick laundry list. The game at the Tuck Rule game, the night was surreal. The snow, the Vinatieri field goal, the whole aura of it.
That was
people,
incredible.
J.R. Redmond and our boy from Eastie catching 10 passes. Wiggy.
Wiggy.
Okay. Basketball, the triple overtime game with Phoenix on June 4th, 1976, still stands out above all. Although there's about a 10-way tie for second with many bird things.
Right.
And Bird's. Game 6, Bird's Heat game against the Lakers in '84. Football, I said that. Hockey, the 5 years ago, the championship, specifically the 1-0 Game 7 against Tampa Bay with no penalties, which Guy Boucher of the Lightning said was like 60 minutes of overtime to field the whole game.
Right.
And then being in Vancouver, down 0-2, the whole experience of that. But that game with Tampa Bay, if I could relive a hockey game that I saw, I would say, for me, I would pick that game.
Right.
And then finally, baseball, not one game, but the combination of games 4 and 5 in 2004. Because there was 11 hours plus of baseball, games ending on the same calendar day, because the game 4 ended after midnight and game 5 started at 5 p.m. And of course, the whole heroics of the 9th inning and all coming big out, and Poppy winning the game, and then winning that game, and that game, I'll never forget, with Wakefield has to come in and he wild pitches the two guys around the guy around the third, and poor Varitek's catching him. He hadn't caught him all year.
Oh, yeah, right.
And you're thinking, here comes another one, and he strikes out Ruben Sierra and gets out of it. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So much drama.
Nerve-wracking.
Those 2 nights of baseball together were my highlight as a writer, but as a fan, as an emotional fan. No more than October 1, 1967 as the culmination of that fan experience. I was a fan, 21 years old. I went to 27 Red Sox games this year, most of them with my then girlfriend, now wife, Elaine. And that whole season was a spectacular thing, ending on that great day on October 1, 1967. So there's some of the baseball stuff.
Well,
Thanks, Bob.
last thing is I appreciate my favorite part. It's not even in your book, which is, by the way, called Scribe, My Life in Sports by Bob Ryan, is the Theo Epstein, famous. Best question.
You know what's funny about that? I have this. I kid him. I said, "What's your fascination with J.D. Drew?" And of course, EEI's
so passive aggressively. It was funny.
EEI's had all this mileage out of it with the rap thing, and that's great. Fine. But if I wrote that, it wouldn't have been a stir. Right?
Oh,
if I wrote that,
that's right.
Then that's what a columnist does.
But
right?
show some balls.
But I said it to him.
Yeah, it's
on the air. And then it has a whole different. Think about that.
Yeah.
Why should it be different? Why shouldn't? But it was. Now he's fine with it. He you know what he did? I'll tell you what he did. And He wrote me a 2-page letter explanation, not defending himself, explaining who J.D. Drew was and is, why he wanted him, what he's all about. Small-time boy from Georgia, doesn't like the limelight, gives some money to the church, blah, 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 all that stuff.
Okay, wow.
But why it was a very thoughtful and not hostile. It was, Bob, here's the deal, okay?
Right.
And I gotta like that.
Absolutely.
And I love
You still won that argument, okay? So this guy, you still won that argument. $75 million for 5 years back then.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like a $25 million deal now.
Did have that grand slam against the Indians.
True.
Was it worth the $75 million? I don't know.
$75 million grand slam.
Had to have that.
Bob Ryan, thanks for being on the show, my
You're
friend.
welcome. That was fun. Thank you.
Anytime, you're welcome anytime back. You're listening to 95.9 WATD, Friends with Benefits.